عليه وسلموا تسليما. Brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And congratulations to everyone on the birth of our master of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We appreciate you guys coming out. It is a Thursday night, it's a weekday night, so we know it's difficult for people. But inshallah, we have a very short program. And then, of course, Sayyid will address the audience in the end. So we just had Dua Kumail, alhamdulillah. And I'm going to request first Brother Hassan Naqvi to come up and give you the Quranic verses that relate to Imam Zaman, and inshallah the tafsir as well, so we can all, of course, benefit from that. So please welcome him with a loud salawat.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألا إن الذين يمارون في الساعة لفي ضلال بعيد. Translation. Know that most surely those who dispute obstinately concerning the hour are in great error. Surah Ash-Shura, 42nd Surah, verse 18. In the tafsir, Mufazzal bin Umar inquired about this verse from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. As to what does dispute obstinately mean over here, the Imam replied, they say, when was he born? Who has seen him? Where is he? When will he reappear? All of these are hastening regarding the affair of Allah, doubting His decree and intrusion in His power. They are those who will suffer losses in this world and in the hereafter, because certainly the disbelievers will have the most evil fate. Mufazzal asked further, is there not an appointed time for him? The Imam alayhi salam replied, O Mufazzal, I cannot appoint a time for him, and neither should a time be fixed for him. Surely the one who fixes the time for our Mahdi has certainly claimed to be a partner with Allah in his knowledge, and has falsely claimed that he has disclosed his secret to him. There's a second verse. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذ يعدكم الله إحدى الطائفتين أنها لكم وتودون أن غير ذات الشوكة تكون لكم ويريد الله أن يحق الحق بكلماته ويقطع دابر الكافرين. Translation. And when Allah promised you one of the two parties that it shall be yours, and you loved that the one not armed should be yours, and Allah desired to manifest the truth of what was true by His words, and to cut off the roots of the unbelievers. Surah Al-Anfal, the 8th Surah, 7th verse. In the tafsir, Ja'far ibn Yazid Jofi narrates that I asked Abu Ja'far, Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. About the meaning of this verse, the Imam replied, it has a hidden meaning for it. Allah desires certain things but does not action them. As for the saying, يُحِقَّ الْحَقَّ بِكَلِمَاتِهِ, manifest the truth by His words, it means that He will manifest the right of the progeny of Muhammad, peace be upon him and his progeny. وَيَقْطَعَ دَابِرَ الْكَافِرِينَ, cut off the roots of the unbelievers means the Banu Umayyah, whose roots will be cut off when the Mahdi reappears. Salawat.
Jazakallah. This was Brother Hassan Naqvi for all his efforts, inshallah. Please recite aloud salawat. And now I would like to call up the honored, esteemed Sayyid Al-Mahdi Modarresi to come on and speak about our 12th Imam, inshallah, and so we can all benefit from the discussion that he'll be giving us, inshallah. So, with a loud salawat, please welcome the Maulana, Brother Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad, salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين الغرر الميامين، سيما بقية الله في الأرضين وحجته على الخلائق أجمعين، سيدنا وإمام زماننا وصاحب نعمتنا وولي أمرنا، مهدي هذه الأمة وطاووس أهل الجنة، الحجة بن الحسن العسكري، فداه أرواح العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Felicitations on the most auspicious occasion of the birth of the Master of the Time, the awaited Savior, God's proof, and the promise made by the all-merciful Allah to each and every one of His prophets and messengers. One of the questions that should bother all of us at some point, the idea of having a master who is inaccessible to us. Someone who not only leads us as a community, but who is entrusted with the task of ensuring that the world itself, the entire universe, moves in the direction set by its creator. It should bother us that we have no access to Him, that we are unable to see Him, that we have no means of reaching Him, speaking to Him, hearing His tender, loving voice. And so, the question that you find most people who are upset by the absence of their master asking is, how do we get to see Him? And I'd like to answer that question by referencing a story. It's a story that many of you might have heard before. But what's so special about this story is the fact that it's been authenticated and narrated by some of our most esteemed scholars. Some of our earliest records and collections of hadith have narrated this story. It's the story of Ali ibn Mahziyah. One of the earliest scholars to mention this tale in detail is Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari al-Imami, who was a scholar of the 5th century in the Hijri calendar. Not to be confused with Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari, the Sunni historian. They have the exact same name, but strikingly different worldviews. This is why sometimes they add a suffix to his name by calling him Al-Imami. Sunni scholars have also spoken about him, and they add another suffix, which is Ar-Rafidi. This great scholar is the author of a book called Dala'ilul Imama. In this book, he tells the story of Ali ibn Mahziyah. I'd like to draw your attention to bits and pieces of this story that perhaps should be highlighted more, that perhaps you might have missed if you have already heard the story. In a nutshell, Ali ibn Mahziyah travels on the pilgrimage to Hajj 20 times. That is 20 times on an arduous journey about which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِلَى بَلَدٍ لَمْ تَكُونُوا بَالِغِيهِ إِلَّا بِشِقِّ الْأَنفُسِ. The house of the Lord has been placed in a land that you cannot reach except with extreme hardship. It's in the Quran. That's why Hajj is never easy. It's a lot easier today than it was back in those days, but it's still an arduous, tough journey to go there. 20 times performs the pilgrimage to the house of Allah, which means 20 times standing on the plains of Arafat, begging Allah for forgiveness and being forgiven and cleansed of his sins. 20 times sacrificing a lamb in the way of Allah and spending from his hard-earned money. 20 times wearing the ihram and stripping himself of worldly desires and dedicating his life to the service and worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 20 years of purification, of cleansing, and of exploration, waiting for the Imam, hoping to see the Imam. Anticipation and exploration, meaning that over the course of these 20 years, he wasn't just sitting idly by. He was seeking his master. He was doing everything in his power to prepare himself for the majesty of having an audience with the Imam of his time. And so 20 years isn't a short period. It's 2 decades. It's a lifetime of cleansing himself, ensuring that he applies all the instructions of the prophets and imams, avoids all sins, purifies himself, and in the end, he is in Masjid al-Haram, in the state of i'tikaf. He wasn't just doing tawaf, but he was in the state of i'tikaf, yet another layer of purification. And he was in the state of circumambulation around the Kaaba, which is when he received glad tidings of being finally given permission to meet with his master. Long story short, Ali ibn Mahziyah follows his guide, who takes him to the top of a cliff. On the top of that cliff there was a tent. He enters the tent. He stands before God's proof, speechless, breathless, unable to utter a single word. How could you, having met the one for whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows the earth to survive. The one for whom Allah sends rain and mercy and compassion. He stands there speechless. The Imam says to him, "What do you seek?" He then musters up the courage to respond by saying, أطلب الإمام المحجوب عن العالم. I seek the leader who is veiled from the world. The Imam then said to him, إنه غير محجوب. No, he is not veiled. ولكن حجبه سوء أعمالكم. It is your evil actions that have veiled the Imam. He's not veiled. He's right there. There's a beautiful story which I shared with a group of brothers and sisters the other day, where Imam al-Sadiq, our sixth Imam, alayhi afdalus salati wassalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. He's standing with Abu Basir, one of his companions. And as they were standing outside the mosque with people coming and going, traffic, the Imam said to Abu Basir, ask these people whether they see their Imam. So anyone who walked past him, Abu Basir would say, have you seen the Imam? And he'd say, no, I haven't. Another person would walk past and he'd say the same thing, I haven't seen the Imam, I haven't seen the Imam. Until Abu Harun al-Makfuf, who was one of the companions of the Imam who happened to be blind. Makfuf means blind. When Abu Harun al-Makfuf came, Abu Basir said to him, have you seen the Imam? He said, don't you see him? He's right there next to you. Meaning that you can be blind, but your heart can see the Imam. If the Imam wishes to bestow you with the honor of seeing him, having cleansed your soul of sins and immorality, you can see him. You can be in your home and never get out, yet see him. You can be in the US and you can see him. It doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter how. It's about you. It's not about physical constraints. It's not about the limitations of time and space. The Imam said to him, you are the ones who have veiled the Imam. Then the Imam said to him in a loving, tender voice, admonished him, complained to him. He said to him, إِنَّا كُنَّا نَتَوَقَّعُكَ لَيْلًا وَنَهَارًا. We have been waiting for you. We have been expecting you day and night. Ya ibn al-Mahziyar, where have you been? Ibn Mahziyar said to him, لم أجد من يدلني على ذلك. Ya ibn al-Hasan, I didn't have a guide. I didn't have someone to show me the way. How could I have found you? I came to Hajj 20 times seeking you. I tried everything. And until you gave me the chance and sent someone after me to show me the way, I could never have found my way to you. So the Imam asked a rhetorical question. He said to him, لم تجد من يدلك. You haven't found someone to guide you? لا ولكن. Listen carefully, brothers and sisters. That's not the reason you couldn't find me. That's not the reason you couldn't trace me. You know what the real reason is? No! ولكن كثرتم الأموال وتجبرتم على ضعفاء المؤمنين وقطعتم الرحم الذي بينكم فما عذركم. These 3 points, they answer the question that I started off with. How can we see the Imam? Why have we been prevented from this honor? The answer to most people lies in these 3 points. What are they? The Imam says, كَثَّرْتُمُ الْأَمْوَالِ. You have sought to increase your wealth. وَتَجَبَّرْتُمْ عَلَى ضُعَفَاءِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And you have exerted force and oppressed the weaker members of the community, the weak mu'mineen. And 3, you have severed your familial relations with your own family, with your own kin. Then he says, فَمَا عُذْرُكُمْ. This statement is painful to hear, brothers and sisters. The Imam says, what's your excuse? Why the belated arrival? What took you so long? Why would you not come to us? Here's the answer. You've sought to increase your wealth. Money and the pursuit of money is our obsession. We're talking about the mu'mineen. We're not even talking about people who don't know the Imam. The community of believers and those who anticipate his return are obsessed with money. Are they not? We're kidding ourselves if we say that's not the case. We'd be mocking ourselves if we deny this fact. Our priorities have been turned upside down. It's all about money. It's all about wealth. The hadith says, الناس في الدنيا بالأموال وفي الآخرة بالأعمال. You know what the standard in this day and age is? How do you evaluate someone? How do you know if someone is good, someone is worthy, someone is special, someone must be respected? How? The first thing you do is you look at their bank account. The first thing you do is you look at their car, you look at their home, you look at their boat, you look at their possessions. In this world, your worth is measured by how much money you have. الناس في الدنيا بالأموال. If you have enough money, and I've said this before, the other day there was an interview done with the granddaughter of Walt Disney, the founder of the Disney Empire. It was a really interesting article. Look it up if you can. In that article, she said that if I had the power, I would stop people, I would make it illegal for people to buy or fly in private jets. Why? She said, because I saw what private jets did to my own parents. When the wealth started to build up, when we had enough money where we could afford to buy our own private jet, she said, my parents bought a 737 plane. And using that plane, we would go on the most unnecessary trips, right? She goes, on one occasion, I remember I had a conference to attend on the West Coast. I used to live in New York. So my father said, why don't you take the plane? So she said, sure. You have a private jet and you don't use it? So she said, I went on the plane. We took off. And I quickly realized that there is a crew of over 20 odd people, including the pilots, including the flight attendants, including all the people that make sure that the plane is in order. 25 people, a 737, all the fuel, all the carbon footprint. So what? So I could fly from New York to Los Angeles and attend a conference. And so then she said, the thing about private jets is that you live in your own little bubble. You don't interact with other people, with normal human beings. You fly, you take off from a different airport, you land in a different airport, there is hardly any security, there is hardly anything. You don't go through the normal process that other people go through. They say that traveling is the greatest equalizer, everybody gets treated the same. Rubbish! No such thing. If you can afford, if you have the money, you'll be treated like a king no matter where you are. الناس بالدنيا بالأموال. In this world, it's about how much money you got. وفي الآخرة بالأعمال. In the next life, your net worth is worth zilch. It's about your actions. It's about your deeds. It's about what you have done. It's about what you've sent for yourself into the next life. But this is how standards have been twisted and turned. It's all about money. Have you noticed how if someone sees a rich person on the street, they come back and tell their friends, did you know I saw such and such? Did you know I saw or I bumped into some celebrity? Why? Because that person's rich, because they're powerful, because they're a celebrity. Merely seeing someone rich makes us feel good. It's not like their wealth is going to rub off on you, but we feel good about it. That's how pathetic we are. If you happen to know someone rich, and I've noticed this, when somebody says, you know, me and such, we write to each other. So what? So what? You're struggling with your own bills. You happen to know someone who is wealthy. All of a sudden, see the standards? You see what the Imam is talking about? Which is why Amir al-Mu'mineen says, listen to this. He says, من أتى غنيا فتواضع له لغنى. You've all heard the hadith that the Prophet says, if you marry someone early on, as soon as possible, subtle hint for all the youngsters here who are not married, inshallah. The Prophet says that if a young person, a youth, gets married at an early age, before college, before anything else, before you set your own plans for your life, as soon as possible, for the sake of God. If you do that, فَقَدْ أَحْرَزَ ثُلُثَيْ دِينَهِ. You will have secured 2/3 of your religion. You've all heard this hadith? Alhamdulillah. Let's hope you all apply it as well. This hadith that I'm about to mention is the opposite. The Imam says that if you go to a wealthy person and you humble yourself before them because of their wealth. If the wealthy is a mu'min and a believer, then you respect them just as you would respect any other believer. That's okay. But if you respect them and humble yourself, or God forbid, humiliate yourself, even so much as speaking in a humbler voice to them, because they're wealthy, ذَهَبَ ثُلُثَا دِينِهِ. 2/3 of your religion is expunged. Another hadith says, I believe it's by Imam al-Hasan, he says that if you humble yourself before a rich person because they're rich, even if they end up giving you money, I mean, that's the whole idea, right? You're humbling yourself so that maybe they'll share part of their wealth with you. Even if they give you part of their wealth, Allah will strip that money of any trace of blessing and barakah. And if you spend that money, this is in the rest of the hadith, if you spend that money to go to Hajj and to do good deeds and to give charity, Allah will not give you any reward for that. You know who needs to hear this? All the charities that throw these big banquets so that they could invite all these rich people for a good cause, right? That's their excuse, right? It's for a good cause. Allah says, you know what, this good cause of yours, I will not give you any reward because you are humbling yourself and showing excessive respect for a rich person who, if he weren't rich, you wouldn't show that kind of respect to. Just because he happens to be wealthy. These are the standards with which we live in this world and in this day and age. And we are believers. You wonder why we have no access to the Imam? وَلَكِنْ كَثَّرْتُمُ الْأَمْوَالِ. All you care about is money. Someone came to the fifth Imam, Imam al-Baqir alayhi salatu wassalam. He said to him, Ya ibn Rasulullah, you know you have a lot of followers in Kufa. You got so many fans. All you got to do is say the word. All you have to do is tell them and they'll follow you. They'll obey you. Ask them to rise. Even believers who lived in the time of previous Imams would always urge the Imams to rise up and to do what we expect our Imam to do. Right? To be the one who rises, to be the one who cleanses the world of oppression and injustice. So they would come to their Imam and plead and beg and try and urge the Imams to do something. So he said to the Imam, you have a lot of followers, why don't you do it? All you have to do is say the word. The Imam said, let me ask you a question. أَيَجِيءُ أَحَدُكُمْ. Have you ever seen this scenario before? Where because you're such a good tight-knit community, everybody's a believer, everybody's waiting for the word of the Imam, for the permission to rise and do whatever it needs to be done. Do you ever see one of these believers reach into the pocket of another believer, فَيَأْخُذُ مِنْهُ حَاجَتَهُ, and take as much as they need? He said, no, that never happens. We all have our own bank accounts. Nobody touches another person's bank account. If they need They can ask, maybe we'll do something. But for them to just go ahead and reach into the account and take whatever money they want, that never happens. The Imam said to him, listen carefully. He said, فَهُمْ بِدِمَائِهِمْ أَبْخَالٍ. If they're being stingy when it comes to their wealth, being given and dispersed for the help and support of their brothers and sisters in faith, they'll be even more stingy when it comes to giving their blood in the way of their brothers and sisters. If they're not willing to give money, you think they're willing to give their lives? To lay their lives to protect another person just because they happen to be believers? Amir al-Mu'mineen says in a hadith, he says, Al-Bukhlu wal-Jubnu wal-Hirs, stinginess, cowardice, and greed. Ghara'izu shatta. They are three distinct instincts, three characteristics and features: being miserly, stingy, being a coward, and having greedy. The Imam said, even though these three seem to be distinct and different from one another, يَجْمَعُهَا سُوءُ الظَّنِّ بِاللَّهِ. What brings them together, you can trace them all back to what? To not having faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's our problem. That's why we're stingy. That's why we're miserly. It's because our faith in God is lacking. And you expect to meet the Imam when my faith in God is lacking? Look at the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 261. Look it up. Look at what God promises to the believers who give in His way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ أَمْوَالَهُمْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. The example of those who give their wealth in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, كَمَثَلِ حَبَّةٍ أَنْبَتَتْ سَبْعَ سَنَابِلْ فِي كُلِّ سُنْبُلَةٍ مِئَةُ حَبَّةٍ. The example of them is like one who plants a seed. Each seed gives rise and sprouts 7 seeds. Each one of those contains 100 seeds. Which means what? Which means that every dime you give in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be multiplied and amplified by how much? 700 times. 700 times, not percent. And yet, as Imam al-Zaman said, وَلَكِنْ كَثَّرْتُمُ الْأَمْوَالِ. All we care about is accumulating more money. And when we have enough money, suddenly the interest rate becomes very important. If the interest rate goes up or down, you pay close attention. Why? Because we would rather put that money in the bank and receive, what? Is it 5% nowadays? 4%? 6%? Let's say an average of 5%. 5% interest. Setting aside the whole question of whether it's halal or haram, that's a whole other thing. Another discussion for another day. 5%. We believe in 5% interest more than we believe in an interest rate of 7,000%. That's stipulated in this verse that I just recited. Do you know what 5% is? If you add another 95%, that's just double now. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, I'll give you 700 times. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the end of that verse says, He says, even that doesn't limit Allah and His giving and His generosity. وَاللَّهُ يُضَاعِفُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ. And Allah can multiply even further. وَاللَّهُ وَاسِعٌ عَلِيمٌ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has access to all the riches of the world. Instead of helping our brothers and sisters, what do? We save the money up because there is a mighty 5% interest rate that I've been offered. Look after your brothers and sisters, the Imam says. I'd like to propose 2 things tonight. 2 ideas. Think about them. See if they're feasible. See if they're something that we can achieve as a community, inshallah, in this community and other communities around the world. Right? Idea number 1. Set up an interest-free loan bank for people who need the money. Sometimes believers are trying to buy a house. Young people. One of the reasons, we keep telling young people to get married, but let's face it. One of the reasons they can't get married is because it's expensive. The marriage itself, let's say, mashallah, they simplify it. They strip it down to the bare bones. They make sure that the dowry is only sahmul the sunnah, according to the sunnah of Rasulullah, mahrus sunnah, right? Which is about $1,000. May Allah bless you if you do that. Rasulullah said, I have never gotten married myself, nor have I married other people except when the dowry is mahrus sunnah. Not a dime more. Not even an extra copy of the Quran to be added on top. Give it as a gift. But make sure that the dowry is only mahr sunnah, 500 silver coins that Fatima Zahra, the most blessed woman in history, received as her dowry. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala. Help them facilitate their marriages. But let's say they strip it down to the bare bones minimum. They need to get a place to stay. They need an apartment. They need a house. Sometimes they need an extra $10,000 to put the down payment and get a loan to pay it off as they work and as they develop themselves and as they grow and flourish. Help them do that. If you don't want to give them the money as a gift, do this. قال رسول الله. Listen to this hadith. مكتوب على باب الجنة. There's an inscription at the top of the gate of paradise. الصدقة بعشر والقرض بثمانية عشر. If the reward of charity was 10 times, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you $10 worth of reward for every dollar you gave as charity, Allah gives you 18 times when you give it as a loan. Give it as an interest-free loan. Every community should have an interest-free loan as an option for people who need the money. One of the ulama who was related to me, he said, you know what? I've got this house and I'm thinking of selling it. You can live in a rental home. It doesn't have to be in your name. It's just a paper. He said, I'd like to sell this house and then take all the money and put it into an interest-free loan bank for people to borrow from, especially family members, right? So somebody said to him, but say it, the reality is that a lot of people will take the loan but never pay it back. That's how it is. That's why it's so hard to get a loan from the bank, because they need so many assurances and co-signers and 1,000 different things before they give you a loan. He said, look, let's say I lose 50%. Let's say 50% of the people who take out the loan are never able to pay it back. It's okay, it's worth it. Because if it's a loan, I get 18 times reward. If it's something that they don't end up paying, I get 10 times the reward. ولكن كثرتم الأموال وتجبرتم على ضعفاء المؤمنين. I want to talk about this, brothers and sisters. It might make us a little uncomfortable, but that's okay. That's the whole point. I always say the role of a sermon, the role of a lecture in the majalis of the Ahlul Bayt is to make us feel uncomfortable. Otherwise we've achieved nothing. Otherwise we don't progress. Let's set this up. Let's do it here. Let's do it anywhere around the world. Instead of storing the money for some bank to trade with and to make even more money, while we don't benefit the slightest bit, let's store it here. Let's believe in the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's believe it when God says to us. That's our problem, brothers and sisters. It's the fact that we lack faith. How many times do you read in Ziyaratul Jami'ah, this great ziyarah that is recited at the shrines of all the imams? How many times do we say, بِأَبِي أَنْتُمْ وَأُمِّي وَأَهْلِي وَمَالِي وَنَفْسِي. I am willing to sacrifice my father for your sake, my mother, my family, my money, my soul. But do we really mean it? Do we mean it? If you're not willing to give khums, which belongs to Imam al-Zaman, do you think that you'll be able to muster up the courage to lay your life for him when the time comes? So that's our problems. We've watched so many Hollywood movies, so many fake stories of how ordinary people who come from terrible backgrounds, who themselves might not be the most moral people, but when the time comes, when the push comes to the shove, when there is a moment of truth for them to display who they really are, suddenly they turn into superheroes. That's not how it works in real life. In real life, if you're not generous now, when the time comes and the Imam appears and he wants you to give everything that you have, when the call comes and you have to drop everything, your wealth, your money, your family, your job, your career, your education, everything has to be thrown behind. Just as when you pray and you say Allahu Akbar and raise your hand to the manhar, you raise your hand like so, in a gesture of putting the whole world behind you. When that call is made, when the Imam calls you, if you are not trained, if you haven't disciplined yourself with giving and with charity and with generosity and with bravery and with courage and all of these different good character traits, you won't be able to do it. Uddatul Da'i is a book written by one of our most esteemed scholars, someone who lived about 700 years ago, by the name of Allama ibn Fahd al-Hilli. Inshallah, when you all go to Karbala and visit the majestic shrine of Imam al-Hussein, alayhi salatu was-salam, Allahumma salli. As you head out of the shrine on what's called Shari' al-Qibla, facing the direction of the Qibla, you move, I'd say about 600-700 feet, and on your right you will find a small dome. If you look inside, there is a shrine, there's a dharih. That shrine belongs to Allama ibn Fahd al-Hilli, rahmatullah ta'ala alayh. As I said, he lived about 7 centuries ago. He has a book of dua, a book of prayers and supplications called Uddatul Da'i. It's considered one of the most authentic and best books of dua. In that book, he narrates a hadith. Listen carefully. He says, he quotes Ibn Abbas as saying that I was in Masjid al-Haram in the state of i'tikaf. I'tikaf, for those of you who don't know, inshallah, I hear that in this city you have an i'tikaf program. Make sure you do this, inshallah. The holy month of Ramadan coming, if you can do it. And what it is essentially, it's a minimum of 3 days spent in a masjid, a mosque. Fasting on the first and second day is optional, but is obligatory on the third day. You must fast on the third day. Obviously, if you do it in the holy month of Ramadan, you fast all 3 days. He says that we were in the state of i'tikaf. So they were fasting. They were also in the holy, sacred mosque of Allah, Masjid al-Haram. And he says we were in the state of circumambulating around the Kaaba. Him and Imam al-Hasan, he says that while we were doing tawaf, this stranger came to the Imam. He says to him, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I need money. I have borrowed from someone, I have a loan, and I'm unable to pay it back. The Imam swore that he didn't have money to help him. Allahu Akbar. This is Imam al-Hasan, by the way. Kareem wa Ahlul Bayt. This generous Imam who used to give and give and give to the point where he became known as the most generous person in Medina. And yet, there comes a time when he didn't have access to funds. He swore, he said to him, I'm sorry, I don't have anything to give you. He said to him, no, I'm not asking you to give me the money. The person I borrowed the money from, he is here in Mecca. He has a store or whatever. And I'd like you to come and maybe speak with him. See if he's willing to give me an extension on the loan. Imam al-Hasan immediately stopped the tawaf and began to follow the man to wherever he was leading the Imam. Ibn Abbas said, I called the Imam. I said to him, Anasit, have you forgotten that we're in the state of i'tikaf? Because one of the conditions of i'tikaf is you're not allowed to leave the mosque unless absolutely necessary, unless it's something that can't wait. So he says, I told the Imam, have you forgotten that you're doing tawaf? And you're also in the state of i'tikaf? The Imam said to him, no, I have not forgotten, Ya Ibn Abbas. ولكن سمعت جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. I have heard my grandfather Rasulullah say, من سعى في حاجة أخيه المؤمن. Whoever puts an effort to resolve a problem for his brother or sister in faith, فكأنما عبد الله تسعة آلاف سنة. It's as if he has worshipped Allah 9,000 years. يصوم نهارها ويقوم ليلها. 9,000 years worth of worship where he spends the entire night in prostration and worship and the entire days in fasting. Imam al-Hussein has a beautiful saying. On the day of Ashura, Imam al-Baqir says that my grandfather Aba Abdullah al-Hussein had 300 wounds all over his body. 300! And yet, he made a few timeless statements. One of them is this. He said that I quote, he said, حَوَائِجُ النَّاسِ إِلَيْكُمْ نِعَمُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ. When people come to you with their needs, these are God's blessings and bounties upon you. فَلَا تَمِلُّوا النِّعَمْ. Do not run away from God's bounties. Do not turn away from God's blessings. If somebody comes to you with a need, comes to you with a problem, one hadith says that if you have the means to help them, help them. If you don't have the means, if you don't have the money, are you excused? Are you exempt from this? No. The Imam says, at least use your social status. Speak to someone who can. If you have any social status, if you are respected in your community, someone comes to you for help, you can't help him, that's fine. Pick up the phone. Or tell him, let's go and speak to someone who can. Let's go and speak to someone who can. Subhanallah. These are the examples of the Ahlul Bayt. Right? One of the great things about community centers such as this and mosques around the world, if you're hearing this and you live anywhere in the world, this is something you can implement right there in your community. One of the blessings is that you use this community for helping other people. I mentioned having a bank or a building society or any informal structure where you can offer interest-free loans. Another thing you can do is when you gather around after the prayer, if there is someone in the community who needs your help, open it up, tell others, tell them that we have someone who wants to get married and that could really use some financial help. Or we have a new immigrant who's come and they need your help. Or we have a refugee who could use your help. Or we have a community here of homeless people who could use your help. Use this as a platform. I don't want to get into this now, but we have examples where Rasulullah, Amirul Mu'mineen, the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt, they would lead prayer in the mosque. And then after the prayer would end, they would turn to the people and say, is there someone who is sick so that we could go and pay them a visit? Is there someone who has died so that we could go and participate in their funeral? Is there someone, هَلْ مِنْ طَالِبِ حَاجَةٍ? Is there someone who could use our help so that we could collectively help them? What is the point of praying in a masjid, in a mosque, in a Husayniyah? If we don't do these things, anyone can pray anywhere. You can pray in the park. You can pray at home. We come to these places so that the power of the community can amplify our ability to help others. Use this as a platform. Listen to this hadith. I swear to God, when I was reading the hadith, I burst into tears. Someone came to the commander of the faithful. He was a Bedouin, some Arab, no one knew him. He came to the Imam and he asked him for help. He said, I could really use some financial assistance. Amirul Mu'mineen, obviously there were times when the Imam had money. For example, the 3-4 years when they had access to Fadak, the Ahlul Bayt would get about 200,000 dirhams or 200,000 dinars from the sale of dates, from the palm trees of Fadak, and so they had access to money at some juncture in their lives. But there were other times when they had absolutely nothing. Right? You've all heard stories. The Quran has immortalized those stories of the Imam having nothing. So the Imam told him, he said, I don't have anything to give you. I'm sorry. So the Bedouin turned around, and as he was walking away from the Imam, he said to him, Wallahi, by God, لَيَسْأَلَنَّكَ اللَّهُ عَنْ مَوْقِفِي بَيْنَ يَدَيْكَ. I swear that on Judgment Day, God will ask you as to why you turned me away. Now, if it's anybody else, if this was me or you, we'd say, what kind of a beggar is this? What audacity does he have? I'm telling you, I don't have anything. Amirul Mu'mineen is telling you he doesn't have anything. You turn around and you do this, you rub salt into injury. So the Imam burst into tears. He started crying. فَبَكَى وَدَعَى بِهِ. He said, bring him back. Go tell him to come back. Then when he came back, the Imam said to him, say that again. So the man told him, Wallahi la yas'alannaka Allahu an mawqifi hadha bayna yadayk. God will ask you on the day of judgment and say that this beggar came to you seeking help and backing, and you turned him away. So the Imam cried again. Listen to this. Then the Imam told Qambar, he said, Ya Qambar, alayya bid-dir'i al-fulani. Go bring me that shield of mine. He didn't have money. He said, go bring me that shield. He brought the shield. The Imam gave it to the beggar. Then he said to him, La tukhda'anna anh. Come, I want to tell you something. Don't be fooled into selling this at a cheap price. For wallah, كم من كرب كشفته به عن وجه رسول الله. God only knows how many threats I shielded Rasulullah from using this shield. This was the personal shield. Have you noticed how sometimes people have like a family heirloom or something really special, something close to their heart, right? Something that their grandfather left them, their mother, their father, someone really close to them, right? This was that to Amirul Mu'mineen. He said, I use this shield in every war, in every battle, in every ambush, in every onslaught. Rasulullah would call out, Ayna Habibi, Ayna Dir'i, Ayna Sayfi. Where is my shield? Where is my sword? Where is my sweetheart? Where is my beloved? They would say, who are you talking about, Ya Rasulullah? He would say, Ayna Habibi Ali. Where is Ali? Call him. Tell him to come. I need his help. And it was this shield that I used to protect Rasulullah from death. If you're going to sell it, make sure you don't sell it too cheap. Qambar said, he said, Wallah, if Amirul Mu'mineen had given him 20 coins, that would have sufficed. But not Ali. When Ali gives, he gives the dearest thing to his heart. Then Qambar said to Amirul Mu'mineen, Ya Amirul Mu'mineen, why would you do this? Just ask anyone and anyone would have been able to help him. The Imam said, listen to me, Qambar. On the day of judgment, if I had everything under the sun and I gave it all in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, But God still decided to question me on this man who came and asked and I wasn't able to deliver, I wasn't able to help. I would rather not do this. This is the length that the Ahlul Bayt would go in order to help their brothers and sisters. Like I said, you don't have money, use your social standing. You don't have money, you still have a tongue, don't you? You still have your hand, you still have your phone. Pick it up, make the call. Do what needs to be done. They say that Ayatollah Sheikh Abdul Karim al-Ha'iri, who was a great luminary, the founder of the Hawza in the holy city of Qom, a marja' of the highest caliber, rahmatullah ta'ala alayh, when toward the end of his life, one of his students saw him in agony and in pain, and he was really upset. So he said to him, Shaykhana, what's wrong? Why are you so upset? He said, well, I have had to borrow 50,000 tomans. Back in the day, 50,000 tomans, this is like 70 years ago or so, it was a lot of money. Let's say it was around a couple of $1 million. He said, I've had to borrow all this money and used it in the running of the Islamic seminary, in the functioning of the religious institution, helping the students and those who seek the knowledge of Imam al-Zaman. Someone has to feed them, someone has to clothe them. And I didn't have money, so I borrowed all these funds. He said to him, well, Shaykhna, you don't have to worry about this. The money will be paid back. If you can't pay it back, whoever comes after you, the marja' who comes next, will be obligated to pay this. You didn't borrow for yourself, you borrowed for the Imam. He said, that's not what I'm worried about. I'm worried that when I die, Imam al-Zaman will see me and say that you had the social standing to borrow even more. You could humiliate yourself even more than that. Why didn't you? I gave you the social status, so what? So you could feel good about yourself, so that people could turn to you and point at you and say, oh, this man is the such and such of the community? Or I gave it to you so that you would expend it. They say one of the maraja', who's actually related to me, and he was a great marja', highly respected, highly regarded in the holy city of Najaf. They say that one day his students came to the shrine of Amir al-Mu'mineen only to see this grand Ayatullah and marja' with his robe on the floor of the shrine, while he was calling out, saying, is there anyone who would like to give charity for the poor? I'm here collecting charity for them. So his students ran to him saying, Agha, what are you doing? You're humiliating yourself. You're putting yourself in this position, extending your hand and asking people for donations. Let us do that. What's going on? He said, no. The reason I've done this is because I felt that if I die and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to me that you never really used, in Farsi they say, Abaruya khudet, your social standing, the respect that you have in the community, you never put it to any good use. You never used it for the benefit of others. So I thought I would do this. I thought I would humiliate myself like this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Maybe Allah will forgive me because of this action. ولكن كثرتم الأموال وتجبرتم على ضعفاء المؤمنين. We spoke about the first part. You've accumulated money, you've been obsessed with money, trying to raise more and more money, storing it in banks and not using it for the benefit of the believers. Now the second part, وَتَجَبَّرْتُمْ عَلَى ضُعَفَاءِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Brothers and sisters, I said I have two proposals, right? The first, try and set up some kind of a bank to offer interest-free loans. The second is this: each one of you, believers, lovers of Imam al-Zaman, those who are among the muntadhireen and the anticipators, and those who wait for the return of the Imam, each one of you has an obligation to take 1, 2, 3, 4, however number of people that you can under your wing. Help them overcome the misconceptions that they're bombarded with on a daily basis. Help them overcome hopelessness. Tell them, give them glad tidings that our Imam is here, he is alive. Tell them that we have a master, we have a leader, We have someone looking after us. إِنَّا لَسْنَا نَاسِينَ لِذِكْرِكُمْ وَلَا مُهْمِلِينَ لِمُرَاعَاتِكُمْ وَلَوْلَا ذَلِكَ لَأَخَذَتْكُمُ اللَّأْوَاءُ وَاصْطَلَمَكُمُ الْأَعْدَاءُ. We are never neglectful of you, the Imam says. We may be bad children, but have you noticed how when a young child might even scratch the face of his mother, but the mother will never throw him away, right? The mother will only embrace the child. I may be a bad, delinquent, insubordinate, juvenile, but the Imam is even more merciful and more compassionate than my own mother and my own father. Doesn't Rasulullah say, Ana wa Ali abawa hadhihi al-ummah? Ali and I are the two fathers, the parents of this nation. Imam al-Zaman is our father. Imam al-Zaman cares. He says, I am never neglectful of you. You may forget about him, but he never forgets. It's like having, it's not a good example, but it helps illustrate what I'm trying to say. Imagine having someone close to you, a father, a mother, who is in prison, and you never ask about them, never even try to pay them a visit, and yet every once in a while they write to you. Every once in a while they call. Take those who could use some guidance, especially those who are younger. The 10-year-olds, the 12-year-olds. There's a program here in the United States as well as in other countries called the Big Brother program. Be a big brother to someone who could use a little guidance. Be a big sister for someone who's confused and lost, drowning in a sea of immorality, a world obsessed with materialism and nothing else. Give them a guiding hand. Give them a moral compass. Maybe hold a program in your home every once in a while. Don't depend only on the mosque or the local community. Throw a celebration for Imam al-Zaman, a celebration for the births of the Ahlul Bayt. Some people might say, well, why is the mosque always about sad things and depressing things? Well, hold a celebration for the birth of the Imams. We have 14 of them. That's 14 occasions throughout the year. Make sure people are able to connect with the Imam of their time. وَتَجَبَّرْتُمْ عَلَى ضُعَفَاءِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَقَطَعْتُمُ الرَّحِمَ الَّذِي بَيْنَكُمْ. And you have severed, the Imam says, the relation with your kin. لا صدقة وذو رحم محتاج, the Imam says. You can't give charity if you have family, if you have relatives who are poor and needy. You must give to them first. Look at your own immediate family members. If they're poor, help them. Stop stocking up money and wealth. Stop saving up for some day that will never come. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, listen to this hadith. Amir al-Mu'mineen, who was the master of eloquence, when he quotes someone else, that quote must be truly eloquent, right? The Imam quotes Luqman al-Hakim. Luqman tells his son, he says to him, Subhanallah, look at mankind. These people, at their most critical times in their lives, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provided for them. When man is in his mother's womb, he's not planning, he's not plotting, he's not doing anything. And yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides for him there. Right? When he is born, nobody does anything. Nobody devises a business plan. No one saves up. No one even thinks about any of these things. And yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides for you. Gives you that most nourishing drink that is better than anything mankind has ever been able to develop. Your mother's milk. Allah provides for you at this critical time. Then the third phase is when you're growing up. Allah makes your parents love you. The kind of love that even they can't explain. Right? Have you noticed, I was reading the other day, that our eyes the size of our eyes don't change from the moment of birth until we die. Which means what? It means that when you're an infant and you're just born, the size of your eyes is exactly the same as their size when you're an adult. Which means that your eyes are extra big in proportion to your face, which makes you cute, which makes you beautiful, which makes you lovely. One of the ways Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what a wise Lord and Creator we have. One of the ways that Allah makes our parents love us is by making us look the way we look when we're first born. You're weak, you're fragile. Your parents love you, they show unconditional love for you, they provide for you. They're willing to spend their days and nights so that you're comfortable. Who provided for you? Other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَعَطَفْتَ عَلَيَّ الْأُمَّهَاتِ الرَّوَاحِمِ, as Imam al-Hussein says in Dua Arafah. You are the one who swayed the heart of my father and my mother toward me so that they would look after me. So in these three critical phases, who looked after you? Who fed you? Who provided for you? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And yet all of a sudden when we grow old and we think we know what's going on, we become concerned and worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. This greed, this insatiable desire, this feeling of having to save up for a rainy day comes despite the fact that Allah has looked after us at every rainy day. Whenever we needed Him, He came through for us. And yet, we don't expect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us. That's why we become so miserly and stingy. Anyway, how is it that we're able to reach the Imam? By making sure that we avoid these three ailments and diseases. When Imam al-Zaman said this to Ali ibn Mahziyar, Ali ibn Mahziyar began crying. He said, Al-Afu, Al-Afu, At-Tawbah, At-Tawbah, Al-Iqala, Al-Iqala. How beautiful is it that when you are reminded of your flaws and of your mistakes, you immediately seek forgiveness. Forgive me, relieve me, relieve me, he said to the Imam. This is after 20 years of cleansing, after 20 years of purification. He says, forgive me, Ya Hujjat ibn al-Hasan. Then the Imam said to him, Ya ibn al-Mahziyar, had it not been for the fact that you pray for each other, that you seek forgiveness for each other, you would have long perished. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects you because when you realize the errors of your ways and the mistakes that you've made, you seek His forgiveness. How is it that Imam al-Zaman writes a letter to Shaykh al-Mufid and says to him, إِلَى الْوَفِيِّ الرَّشِيدِ وَالْأَخِ السَّدِيدِ الشَّيْخِ الْمُفِيدِ أَدَامَ اللَّهُ أَيَّامَ إِعْزَازِهِ. To my brother, to my loyal and mature friend, to the beneficial Shaykh, Al-Shaykh Al-Mufid is a title given by Imam al-Zaman to Shaykh Al-Mufid. And then he said to him, may Allah prolong the days of your honor. Allahu Akbar, what a dua. What a dua. What is it about Shaykh Al-Mufid that makes Imam al-Zaman address him as my brother? And the difference between him and someone like me. Well, now we know. Now we know. Look at my life and look at the lives of the people who had access to the Imam. And you'll see the stark contrast between the two. Now you know why you keep saying, I wish I could see the Imam, but you can't. Now we know. What is it that makes Imam al-Zaman reach out to the scholars of the faith? Such that Allam al-Hilli, who was tired, but he was focused on finishing that task on that day. The task was that he would take a copy of a book written by a Sunni mullah, trying to sow seeds of misconception and doubt in the hearts and minds of the followers of the Ahlul Bayt. Someone like Ibn Taymiyyah al-Harrani and others, whose very job is to try and deviate the Shia from the path of their Imam's pleasure and acceptance. Allamatul Hilli sets out to write a rebuttal to that book. But the one who gave him the book said you can only have it for one night, which means that he only had one night to take a copy of it. And so Allama al-Hilli goes, he's about to sit down to write the book, but he's very tired. He needs to spend the entire night. Suddenly someone knocks at the door. Allama al-Hilli goes to the door. He sees this man wearing an Arab garb, a stranger, someone he had never seen before. The Allama thinks to himself, I had to spend the next night in copying this book. Now I have a guest to look after. How will I do both of these things? But of course it's a guest. And so he welcomes him into his house. The man comes inside. Allama al-Hilli says, welcome, my friend. He enters, looks at the books. He says to him, what are you doing? He said, nothing. It's just something I'm working on. He said, no, please tell me. He said, well, I'm trying to copy this book. So the man says to him, well, you look tired. How about you go get some sleep while I do the work for you? Allamatul Hilli initially resisted. Eventually he gave in. He was very tired. So he went to bed, only to then suddenly wake up to see that the stranger had left. He went to his books. He noticed that he had copied the entire book. And at the very end, he had signed his name. تمت وأنا الحجة ابن الحسن. Allamatul Hilli, don't think that you're all alone. Oh followers of Imam al-Zaman, oh Shia of the Imam of your time, don't think you're all alone. You're not. But make sure that you award him at least a part of the thought that he gives you. Give it to your Imam. How is it that Imam al-Zaman appears before some people but not people like me? How is it that he comes to Ayatullah al-Uzma, Mirza Mahdi al-Isfahani, to tell him أخذ المعارف من غيرنا مساوق لإنكارنا وأنا الحجة ابن الحسن. Seeking gnosis and knowledge of your faith from others is tantamount and parallel to rejecting us. Why is it that some people get that honor but others don't? The answer is in the same letter of Imam al-Zaman to Shaykh al-Mufid. He said to him, فَلْيَعْمَلْ كُلُّ وَاحِدٍ مِّنْكُمْ بِمَا يُقَرِّبُهُ إلى رضانا وليتجنب ما يدنيه مما يسخطنا ويكرهنا فإن أمرنا بغتة فجأة. Make sure that each of you occupies themselves with the things that please us and avoids the things that displease us, that anger us. For when the time comes, our affair will be abrupt, it will be sudden. Prepare yourselves. Ya Allah. Let us recite Dua al-Faraj for the Imam, inshaAllah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma kun li waliyyak al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan. Let me hear your voice. الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة. ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. اللهم وهب لنا رأفته ورحمته ودعاءه وخيره ما ننال به سعة من رحمتك وفوزا عندك يا كريم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Let us recite Surah Al-Fatiha, inshallah, after dua al-shifa, inshallah, wa qada al-hawa'ij, for all the mu'mineen, all the brothers and sisters around the world, all those who are suffering under persecution and oppression, especially those in Qatif, inshallah, and around the world, as well as a member of the community who I was told, one of the mu'mineen, who just had a severe stroke. Inshallah, we dedicate this dua for him as well. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ 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 أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ ويكشف السوء برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصل اللهم على محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين.
I would like to request everyone to please remain seated for just a few more minutes. Our plan was to end the program at 10:30. We had Dua Kumail today, so it went a little bit longer. We have a very nice project going on in Houston, as you all might already know. IEC Al-Hadi School, as a matter of fact, they're making a new building. It's almost finished with the construction. Dr. Jaffrey is over here representing Al-Hadi, and he would like to give a very short 5-minute presentation just to update the community about what's going on with the school. I would like to give him the microphone now, and if I can ask you guys to just give him your attention for just a few more minutes for the benefit of the community. Salawat.
So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, just a short presentation. This is just a short presentation about Al-Hadi. You guys are familiar that there's a full-fledged Islamic school here associated with the IEC Islamic Education Center. So there's a short video about it. Is the video going to play? Huh? It's not playing? Okay, sorry, the video is not playing. So, anyways, the Al Hadi was established back in '96. It's been around for more than 20 years, and it starts all the way from pre-K to high school. And it is accredited. It's an accredited school, and it not only caters for the academic needs, but also provides an Islamic environment for the students. And there's good preparation for college. So if you go through the school, they make sure that you end up in a good college. It's 100% graduation rate for Al Hadi, so very few dropouts or hardly any dropouts. Moreover, there is a on-site halal restaurant, so students don't have to skip out on meals. So the school provides for halal meal, and there are several extracurricular activities that go on there as well, including karate classes, soccer classes, and basketball court. And there is option for preschool as well. So if your kid is or child is not ready for school, so they have preschool starting as early as age 18 months. So overall, it's I think it's a very good school to go to. And the question you can ask is, why should I send my child to Al Hadi when there are other public school options as well? First, I think the foremost thing is that it has a very strong academic foundation. So that is not compromised. Just because it's an Islamic school doesn't mean that the school administration or the faculty doesn't pay attention to the academics of children. So that is the foremost thing. The child would not miss out on any academic achievement. And the other thing is that the children would develop their Muslim identity. I think that's very important when the children are growing up in a Western environment where there is mostly non-Muslims living here, to have a Muslim identity, to know that they are Muslims and they are from a different faith. It's very important for them to have that established right from the get-go. They have good certified teachers. Many of them are community members, and they are well trained and very experienced. Some of them are very experienced, for over 20 years experience in teaching. As I mentioned again, there's an on-site halal cafeteria, so children can eat without asking, why can't I eat chicken nuggets or other things that are served in public schools. And then the big question is that, is it affordable or not? So the tuition is actually quite comparable. I'll show you a slide in a later. And then the next question that people can ask as to, where do people or where do children end up after graduating from Al Hadi? So this lists some of the universities where they have gone to, some of the colleges that they've gone to, not only in Texas but across the country. So if they graduate from the high school, they end up, there's a good chance they end up in a good college as well. The important thing is that, as many of you may know, there's a new building coming up. It's almost ready. It's right from Highway 6, right at the intersection of Highway 6 and Richmond. It's a state-of-the-art facility. One of the criticism of Al Hadi was it does not have good sports facilities, but now this, with new building, they'll have a full football court and a racetrack. So this is really and it's almost ready. The building is almost ready. So the administration's plan is that by the next semester or by the next class, which starts in August, the school would move to the new facility. And this gives you the breakdown of the fees. Compare the fees of Al Hadi, which is mentioned in black, as compared to some of the other private schools and the other Islamic schools, which are listed in green. So you can see the fee is actually quite affordable. And if for some reason there you cannot make the fee, then Al Hadi also has programs of subsidizing the fee. So fee should not be a reason why you should not send your children. Also think of it as an investment. This is an investment that you make in your child, instead of spending money in a retirement account or buying property. This is what you invest in your child. So you'll see the return in your child when he grows up. And there's nothing more rewarding than to see your child behaving well and academically strong and having a good, strong Muslim identity. So I would encourage that you guys go and visit the school. And this is an old slide, but there is also a carnival coming up this Sunday, and it is to be held at the new facility. So you can not only attend the carnival, and also you can see the new facilities. I would encourage all of you to see if you can take some time out this Sunday and Sunday afternoon, I think starting 2 o'clock, and visit the carnival and visit the new facility as well, and see for yourself how beautiful the building is. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for that presentation. Because it's a weekday, we have decided to postpone the quiz for tomorrow. Tomorrow is the weekend. Inshallah, if you guys come back tomorrow, we'll have lots of prizes and stuff for you to win, whoever answers the question. The format will be Jeopardy kind of style. You'll get to pick the question for a certain amount of Sawab dollars. And we'll have one question from the ladies' side, one question from the men's side, and see which side is the smarter one, you know. So inshallah, we'll find out tomorrow. Once again, on the behalf of the Houston community, I would like to thank Maulana Sayyid Mahdi Al-Modarresi for blessing us with his presence. And we are really grateful for him for sparing some time for us. And also for Brother Sajjad for hosting him and arranging for these majalises. We really appreciate everyone who's taking part in the tabarruk and in the organization. All these kids are excited about these two speeches. So we really appreciate every single one of you who's helping out. Inshallah, we will be over here tomorrow at 8 o'clock. We will start with the Maghrib and prayers, and that will be followed by Maulana's speech. So please do try to come on time tomorrow, inshallah. Loud salawat for Maulana. It being Thursday night, maybe we will end with the Ziyarat-e-Warisa. Oh, okay. The other thing that I was just told is that maybe this is a very important message for the people who are watching live right now, that we won't be live tomorrow. So tomorrow's Jashne will not be live. So please try to make it in person. Thank you. Inshallah, we'll start with we'll end this program with Ziyarat-e-Warisa, please. Yeah.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك ورحمة الله وبركاته، السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله، السلام عليك يا وارث نوح نبي الله، السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله، السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله، السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله، السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا وارث علي أمير المؤمنين ولي الله، السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى، السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء، السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى، السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وطاعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات ثيابها، وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين، وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي، وأشهد أن الأئمة من ضدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبيا بكم موقن بشرعي ديني وخواتيم عملي وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. زارت حضرت علی اکبر علیہ السلام. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها الشهيد وابن الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. زيارة شهداء كربلاء. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحباؤه. السلام عليكم يا أسفياء الله وأبداؤه. السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الناصح. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله. بأبي أنتم وأمي طبتم وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما، فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك أيها العبد الصالح المطيع لله ولرسوله. أشهد أنك قد جاهدت ومسحت وصبرت حتى أتاك اليقين. لعن الله الظالمين لكم من الأولين والآخرين وألحقهم بدرك الجحيم. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء. السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء. السلطان أبا الحسن يا علي بن موسى أيها الرضا. روحي وجسمي لك الفداء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولاي صاحب العصر والزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا إمام زماننا هذا. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك وجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه وشيعتك ولا تجعلنا من أعدائك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.